27th of January 2022. Greetings from Rwanda's capital, Kigali. Headlines for tonight's edition. President Paul Kagame points out that the root cause of the migration problem from Africa to Europe is mainly related to political, economic and security issues, so that the solution should come from addressing such problems.
Prime Minister Dr. Edouard Nginene acknowledges the elimination of neglected tropical diseases is possible as Rwanda has been able to eliminate some of these diseases, but that it requires the cooperation of various agencies.
The Rwanda Utilities and Regulatory Authority, RURA, stresses that there are about 7,000 unlicensed tax motorists in Kigali city. Among those that RBA managed to talk to, pointed out that illiteracy is one of the reasons why they cannot get driver's license. A very good evening to you and welcome to Rwanda Television News. My name is Sam Kalisa.
My name is Martina Avera.
How are you, Martina?
I'm very good. How are you doing?
Very good. And as we kick off tonight?
Yes. President Paul Kagame points out that the root cause of the migration problem from Africa to Europe is mainly related to political, economic and security issues, so that the solution should come from addressing such problems. He made the remarks at the debate on migration and mobility in the Africa-Europe partnership. Ethan Tashobia with more.
The virtual conversation on immigration and mobility in the Africa-Europe partnership brought together a number of leaders, including President Paul Kagame, Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis and others, that include Mo Ibrahim, to address the ongoing immigration crisis affecting both continents. President Paul Kagame first outlined some of the reasons for the immigration crisis and expressed his views on the issue.
Different reasons. Some of them justified, others not. But they are either political, economic, security, or that wrapped up on matters of governance. In fact, if Africans, first of all, would be comfortable staying at home in their own countries, and at the same time allowed to move from one country to another, then some of these problems would be reduced to the most minimum. But the terms of the debate are broken. Dangerous journeys continue to cause loss of life and empower criminal networks. We need new thinking and actually action to give us the results we want. To make progress, we must correctly diagnose the root cause of migration.
President Paul Kagame says resolving the migration crisis is to ensure that all citizens have access to basic amenities that help them to thrive and build better lives where they are. The head of state also stressed the importance of cooperation between two continents in resolving the issue of migrants, citing the example of some of Rwanda's achievements in the collaboration with partners which have delivered productive results.
Multi-year partnerships between Africa and Europe can help address the migration challenge both in humanitarian terms and more broadly. One example is the emergency transit mechanism established in Rwanda in 2018. In fact, the discussion started and the offer started in 2018 in partnership with the African Union and UNHCR to receive vulnerable migrants needing evacuation from Libya. Partners in Europe have supported this initiative as well. More than 650 migrants have been welcomed and protected at this facility while awaiting resettlement processing. More comprehensive forms of migration cooperation are also under discussion with some other countries. However, policies focused on detention, deportation, and deterrence have not been effective. and will not provide a lasting solution. Therefore, we have to be thinking and acting differently.
Other commentators at the meeting, including the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, Mo Ibrahim and other European and African leaders, agreed that migration issue was relevant to each side and that special cooperation was needed. A study by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, found that over 31 million Africans live outside their country of birth, the majority within the African continent. Statistics further show that the majority of migration is intra-regional or intra-Africa, especially in West and Southern Africa, and about 25% of African migrants go to Europe. Reporting for RTV News, Ethan Tashabia.
Thank you, Ethan. But before you leave, on another story, Prime Minister Dr. Edouard Ngirente acknowledges that the elimination of neglected tropical diseases, NTDs, is possible, as Rwanda has been able to eliminate some of those diseases, but that it requires the cooperation of various agencies. He was speaking at the event to kick off the Kigali Declaration on NTDs. Tashabia continues.
Excellencies,
This Thursday, Prime Minister Edouard Ngirente, on behalf of President Paul Kagame, virtually officiated at the kickoff of the Kigali Declaration on Neglected Tropical Diseases, also abbreviated as NTDs. Prime Minister said that NTDs were affecting the world's population, but especially those on the African continent.
Neglected tropical diseases have negative effects on those affected and can kill them. Intestinal worms and other NTDs contribute to the stunting of our populations. Globally, about 1.7 billion people are estimated to be affected by NTDs. Africa is the most affected part of the globe, with almost 40% of the global NTD burden. In Rwanda, we are similarly affected by common NTDs.
The Premier pointed out that COVID-19 pandemic has proven that investing in primary health care is very effective and that some efforts should be put in addressing other illnesses, including NTDs, among others, that have not been properly addressed. This, Prime Minister said, would make the world more prepared for future pandemics. He also pointed out that Rwanda has been able to eliminate some of NTDs and that the country has set its eyes on eradicating all NTDs in the next 8 years.
Rwanda commits to eliminate NTDs as a public health problem by 2030. Rwanda has already eliminated some NTDs, including the 5 skin NTDs. We are currently collecting evidence for WHO validation of their elimination. More commitment and endorsement for the Kigali Declaration on NTDs are needed to achieve a better future for our people and reach the 2030 targets. Those commitments and endorsements will be unveiled during the launch of the Kigali Declaration on NTDs during the Malaria NTD Summit in Kigali on the sidelines of Chogom later this year.
The virtual conference, which kicked off the Kigali Declaration on Neglected Tropical Diseases, was attended by some heads of state and government and key stakeholders in the health sector from across the globe. Reporting for RTV News, Ethan Tashabia.
Thank you, Ethan, for the story. Moving on, several people across Kigali city are pleased that the COVID-19 prevention measures have been eased and that the curfew hours have been extended from 10 p.m. to midnight. Jane Mutoni with the report.
The fact that businesses were instructed to close at 3 p.m. and the curfew being at 10 p.m. has resulted into people not getting some services. For this reason, the cabinet meeting concluded that easing on some COVID-19 restrictions would help the recovery of this pandemic. This has been welcomed by many people. It's very helpful because some people get time after work to get some services, such as in saloons. And now that curfew hours have been extended, we shall be able to provide these services without feeling pressured due to the early curfew hours. So it is a good thing, and we are grateful. Service providers and business owners say that with the curfew hours being extended, they will have a chance to earn more and recover from the losses they incurred as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. They say that the easing of the COVID-19 preventive measures will not be taken for granted. We shall now have more clients, and for this we are grateful because during around 6 p.m. you would find everyone closing up in order to get to the bus station on time and arrive home before the curfew. But now we shall be closing up at 11 p.m. and it's fair enough for us and our clients. Minister of State in charge of primary healthcare, Dr. Tarsis Mhunga, says that there is a reason why COVID-19 preventive measures were eased, but also urged people to continue to take precaution.
Looks like we've overcome the fourth wave of the COVID-19 pandemic because the number of COVID-19 cases is reducing day by day. Currently, in every 100,000 people, you will find only 25 people and below that are infected, which shows that we are able to combat it. Hence, activities should begin to resume as the rate of infection is reducing.
Minister of Local Government Gatabazi Jean-Marie Vianney, on the other hand, urges various agencies to continue adhering to the COVID-19 prevention guidelines and that those that have not yet been vaccinated to go and get vaccinated.
Measures were eased so that people can resume their work, which means that we shall keep adhering to the preventive guidelines. But some people, when this happens, they start neglecting these guidelines. So we urge them to keep abiding by the preventive guidelines, which include wearing a face mask, washing hands regularly, and practicing social distancing. The local government is also working hand in hand with the Ministry of Health to ensure that those who haven't received the second doses for the COVID-19 vaccine to receive it on a given time. We request all people that haven't received it to go and get vaccinated.
The cabinet meeting, which took place on Wednesday, the first government sitting in 2022, resolved that curfew hours should be extended from 10 p.m. to midnight and increase the number of employees to be present at work, be it in public and private sector. Meanwhile, football fans have also been given green light to return to stadiums for the first time in weeks since the outbreak of Omicron variant of COVID-19. Jane Motoni, RTV News.
Thank you, Jen Motoni, for the story. And moving ahead, on the 77th commemoration of the Holocaust, which took place at the Kigali Genocide Memorial at Gisozi, genocide denial and negation were stressed as some of the main issues faced with Jews and Rwandans who share the dark history of Holocaust and the genocide against the Tutsi, respectively. This is why representatives of various institutions called upon the world to put efforts in fighting denial. Olive Ntete has more.
That I have bitter memories from the journey.
David Frankel, a survivor of the Holocaust, said that although he survived, he often escaped death so much that his journey back to Israel was the most traumatic for him. He points out that the Jews were killed horribly and the survivors were left with serious injuries, both physically and emotionally. That is Israel's ambassador to Rwanda, Dr. Ron Adam, using his mother's musical instrument when he and many others were taken by train to one of the camps with many people in Poland, where more than 1 million people were killed. His mother survived and passed away at the age of 82 in the last 4 years.
Mid-May 1944, 500,000 Jews were concentrated in the ghettos, and deportations to extermination camp Auschwitz started. In July 1944, no Jew was left in Hungary, except for Budapest. 450,000 Jews burned to ashes in the crematorium of Auschwitz-Birkenau. While the death trains left to Auschwitz and 12,000 Jews were murdered daily just because they were Jews, some leaders of the Jewish community in Budapest opened left to Auschwitz and 12,000 Jews were murdered daily just because they were Jews.
The commemoration of the Holocaust for DNDi, the United Nations resident coordinator in Rwanda, noted that after 77 years of this massacre, the world has been facing negation and denial of the genocide, both for the Jews and for the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda in April 1994.
There are no other places significant to this collective engagement to say never again than Rwanda. Of course, unfortunately, we fail to make it a reality in this country. But there are no other places relevant to commemorate Holocaust than this beautiful country of Thousands Hill, where the genocide against the Tutsi happened in 1994, but where we are seeing decisive society moving from the hardest darkness to the brightest future based on the commitment of its people and contributing to the global peace. Thank you, Rwanda, for showing the way that we should heal our humanity.
The Minister of National Unity and Civic Engagement, Dr. Jean Damascene Bizimana, has noted that Rwanda is determined to fight against the denial and negation of the genocide.
À travers la participation de cette commémoration de l'Holocauste,
through participation in the Holocaust commemoration, Rwanda reaffirms its unwavering commitment to fight against anti-Semitism, racism, and other forms of hate ideology that can lead to targeted extermination of a group. Rwanda, as a state that experienced genocide, we understand the seriousness of the Holocaust as much as you do. The shell is a crime that deeply affects our country, and we have a duty of sympathy.
et nous avons un devoir de solidarité.
Cardinal Antoine Kambanda, the Archbishop of the Diocese of Kigali, talked about love that is usually expressed to someone in his last days until his last breath. Yet in the genocide against the Jews and the Tutsi, people were killed horribly with torture both physically and mentally. People were requested to respect each other's differences, and as different parts of the body complement each other, that is how people should also complement each other instead of prioritizing the differences. This massacre happened since 1941 to 1945, in which more than 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis, led by Adolf Hitler, who ruled many European countries. Olive Nete, reporting for RTV News.
Thank you, Olive, for the reports. On to other matters. Senators on Thursday attended a dialogue on the National Heroes Day that will be celebrated next week on February 1st, 2022. On the main agenda was the story about the bravery of Rwandans, citing the example of Nyanje secondary school students in Ngororero district who refused to separate themselves based on ethnicity even when they were threatened to be killed, some of them eventually losing their lives for that.
During the talks, one of those in the Imena Heroes category who survived the Nyanje massacre in Ngororero district on the night of March 18th to 19th, 1997, Sindai Heba Fanuel expressed his gratitude to the government for the recognition and honoring the act of Nyanje secondary school students. We were all in the age range of 18 to 21. Our school was not as popular as other schools at the time. I thank the leadership of our government for not considering the fact that our school was not that much popular and honor the heroic act of Nyanje students. Sindai Heba Fanuel, 20 at the time, was one of the 47 young men and women who were students at Nyanje Secondary School who refused to divide themselves on the basis of ethnicity as infiltrators demanded. He said that he is grateful to God and the government of Rwanda for helping them to rebuild themselves after the wounds and trauma left by killers that night, adding that they have started encouraging other Rwandans to uphold the spirit of heroism right from children and the youth. Teaching the history of our country from primary to secondary schools as well as higher learning institutions, citing examples of our heroes, including those who are alive and the deceased, will make our history even more relevant and understandable, because the heroes we're always talking about are fathers, grandfathers, or even relatives to our youth. Senators who attended the talks praised the courage of Nyanje youth, who made a strong decision to break away from the history that characterized Rwandans and led the country to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Their act exposed the weaknesses of some of the priests, as he gave us examples who destroyed the church while some of the Tutsi had come to seek refuge from it. The fact that those students chose not to disunite themselves is an important act. This is a good example that our youth in schools should go by to promote unity rather than ethnic divisions which colonialists based on to disunite us. Even as much as generations change, we will keep being Rwandans. The President of the Senate, Augustin Iyamuremye, noted that the heroic act of the Nyanje secondary school students and those who fought for the unity of Rwandans portrays the heroism spirit of Rwandans, and that the government will continue to support that. We have people among the youth and the old people who sacrificed their lives for the unity of our country, including leaders and other people in different fields of work, including the media. We will keep supporting the union of Nyanje secondary school students who sacrificed their lives for the country so that they can keep this heroism spirit. On the night of March 18th and 19th, 1997, 6 students were killed and another was greatly wounded, which resulted to death 4 years later. This year's National Heroes Day will be celebrated under the theme, Our Heroism, Our Dignity. And moving ahead, the Rwanda Utilities Regulatory Authority RURA stresses that there are about 7,000 unlicensed taxi motorists in Kigali city. Among those that RBA managed to talk to pointed out that illiteracy is one of the reasons why they cannot get a driver's license. On the other hand, some say that it is due to bribery that these issues are still evident in Kigali city. Innocent Mugabo has the report.
Among the requirements to join the taxi motor business include a driver's license, although some manage to skip this step. Among these is Paul. His real name is withheld upon request for anonymity. Paul has been a motor taxi operator for about 11 years without a driver's license. On the outskirts of Kigali, we find Paul on a dirt road near the main road. Before setting off from here, it requires him to make a lot of risk assessments, not forgetting keeping his passenger unaware of his situation of not having a driver's license. The other thing is on how to avoid coming into contact with traffic police on the road.
Someone without a driver's license is never at peace due to the fact that he's always dodging the police, but it becomes even worse when you are involved in an accident.
Many motor taxi operators like Paul, who do not have driver's licenses, claim it is due to the fact that they did not go to school.
What is more complicated is getting a provisional permit when you don't know how to read and write. Getting the provisional permit is the most difficult part, but when you get it, you can easily get the driver's license as well. They should set up free reading and writing lessons for us.
Corruption was also pointed out as one of the reasons why some of these motorcyclists do not have the necessary documents, including permits, that would allow them go on the roads.
Sincerely speaking, how much have you ever given out in bribery? I gave out 5,000. Sometimes if you expected to go back home with 5,000, you end up giving it out as bribery, since you have no required documents. For example, when you are caught by the motor taxi law enforcers and you have no required documents, of course you will have to bribe them for you to be released before your motorcycle is confiscated by the police.
The fact that there are unlicensed motorcyclists on the road has a huge impact. This is especially seen when they are involved in an accident or in other cases of insecurity. Motorcyclists who have the required documents stress that this also affects them in terms of fair competition.
They transport at unreasonable fares, since his consumption is different from that of a person with complete documents, whereby he only deals with insurance. We are not okay with them. I urge them to get the required documents, as I also did.
Daniel Ngarambe, the president of Ferwakotamo, a federation of motorcycle cooperatives in Rwanda, notes that the federation is going to address the issue, stressing that not being able to read and write should not be the reason for them to engage in illegal activities.
There are also those that bought motorcycles without permits and have no capacity to get it, since it is the earnings from that motorcycle that enable him to cater for his family and doesn't know how to read and write. But after taking up measures as the Federation, we are to resolve the issue. We ask motorists to report all those that ask for bribery.
The spokesperson for Traffic and Road Safety, Senior Superintendent of Police, Rene Irere, points out that, based on the direction Rwanda is heading, no one should be working illegally.
Basing on how things have been made easy in Rwanda, such cases shouldn't be existing. The process of getting a driver's license is clear, and this involves learning and doing exams.
The Rwanda National Police also urges taxi motor owners to opt for those with complete documents in order to avoid losses. There are 46,000 commercial motorcyclists in Rwanda, with about 24,000 in Kigali city. According to the Rwanda Utilities Regulatory Authority, RURA, about 7,000 of these have no licenses. Innocent Mugabo, RTV News.
Thank you, Innocent, for that report. Moving on, Rwanda Land Management Youth and Authority has announced that it is going to allow the private sector to provide some of the services that are normally offered by the staff to better serve the general public. We have more. There are some services in line with land use the public believes are difficult to access, which are associated with the shortage of workers and equipment at the local government level that provide these services.
Sometimes you find that the sector has no notaries. Sometimes you find that the sector has no notaries. The one in the other sector works in many places, and you and the people in the two sectors needs to be helped by one person, which means that it will not be fast, and yet the service has a specific duration. If it is like that, then things don't go the way they are supposed to. I find that the office is closed for 3 days, yet I'm from the village, expecting to have the service given to me, then I go back home immediately. It really puts me behind the schedule.
At a joint meeting between the City of Kigali and Rwanda Land Management Youth and Authority, both sides pointed out that poor service delivery in the land service was due to the fact that one employee had a lot of responsibilities which were more than they could handle, such as land notary at the sector level, who is also in charge of monitoring the files of those applying for repairs, renovations, and construction inspections. However, Kigali Vice Mayor in charge of urbanization and infrastructure assures that this is going to change.
In the near future, the city of Kigali will be looking for staff who will be in charge of repairs and renovations, as well as another staff member who will conduct inspections so that the notary takes care of the land-related matters, where the duties that were normally done by one person will be distributed amongst 3 employees. The other issue is technology, fast machines, the internet. The good thing is that we are already dealing with that problem. We are planning for each employee to have his or her own 4G fast internet.
On the other hand, the Director General of Rwanda Land Management Youth and Authority, Mukamana Esperance, says that the unfinished files have been high due to the COVID-19 pandemic because some employees were not working. However, she assured the public that all the cases that were put on hold will be revisited as soon as possible with the help of local authorities. They are planning to allow the private sector to provide some of the land services that were normally provided by Rwanda Land Management Youth Authority.
icyo rero twiyemeje nuko uyu mwaka twatangiye tugiye gukorana.
We are also determined that this year we will work closely with local authorities, the city of Kigali, and all provinces and sectors in the country to find a solution to all these problems. There are also new resolutions of the new land law, the appointment of the private sector to provide these services, which will also solve these problems, even though the current service providers must also do their best to offer better services to the people.
N'abahari nabo bagomba gukora cyane kugira ngo abaturage babone serivisi nziza.
Another step will be to re-establish Land Week, which will also address all the problems caused by poor services and for the community to receive fast service delivery.
On behalf of the entire news production team, thank you very much for being with us. My name is Sam Kalisa.
And my name is Martina Avera.
Have a good night.
And stay safe.
Bye.